I'm Joyce, standing here in my new office, looking out at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It's hard to believe how far I've come. It all started with a simple, yet devastating, comment from my husband, Ethan. It was a normal day, or so I thought. Ethan came home and casually said, "My friends think you're not remarkable enough for me. I could do better." Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I remember looking at him, my heart sinking, and simply replying, "Then go find better." That day, I quietly canceled all our plans, the gifts, everything. 2 weeks later, at 4 a.m., I was jolted awake by a phone call. It was Lily, Ethan's closest friend, crying on the other end. "Please answer. Something happened tonight, and it's about you." I groggily checked the clock, 6:15 in the morning. I looked over to see Ethan packing a suitcase. "What are you doing?" I asked, still half asleep. "I'm going to Jake's place for a few days," he said, not even looking at me. He was folding his shirts with an almost aggressive precision. "I need space to think about our relationship, about whether this is really what I want." I sat up, my mind starting to clear. Whether what is what you want? This. Us. He waved his hand vaguely around the bedroom, at me, at the 7 years of our marriage that were embodied in the furniture and framed photos. "You're a great person, Joyce, but my friends have been asking questions about why I'm with someone who doesn't really have ambitions. Someone who's just comfortable. Not impressive." The word unremarkable felt like a slap in the face. Lily said something last night that really stuck with me. She said I was too remarkable to be with someone unremarkable. And I think she's right. He zipped up the suitcase. "So, I'm going to take some time. Figure out if I want to stay in this marriage, or if I want to find someone more aligned with where my life is going." As he walked towards the door with the suitcase in hand, I called out, "Ethan." He turned back, probably expecting me to cry and beg him to stay. But I had something else to say. "Before you go, I need to tell you something about my work, about what I've actually been doing for the last 3 years while you thought I was just comfortable and unremarkable." He set down the suitcase, annoyed. "Joyce, this really isn't the time." I took a deep breath and said calmly, "My company was just acquired for $21 million. My share is $12,700,000. I watched his face as he tried to process this information that didn't fit his narrative. "So, yes, take your time at Jake's place. Think about whether you want to find someone more impressive. And while you're doing that, I'll be planning something special for your birthday. Don't worry, you and all your friends are invited." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I continued, "Oh, and Ethan, the apartment lease is in my name. So take all the time you need. Just not here." The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I'd heard in 7 years. He stood there, frozen in the doorway, his brain visibly trying to make sense of what I'd just said. "You're lying," he finally said, his voice flat and defensive. "You don't have a company. You do freelance consulting from the apartment." I corrected him. "I do crisis management consulting. For tech companies. Data breaches, PR nightmares, executive scandals. The kind of disasters other firms won't touch." I reached for my phone on the nightstand, pulled up my email, and turned the screen towards him. "This is from Catalyst Ventures. The acquisition closed yesterday. Would you like to read the wire transfer confirmation?" He just stared at me like I'd suddenly started speaking a foreign language. I set the phone back down and said, "My business partner's name is Ava. We started the firm 3 years ago, right around the time you got that promotion you were so proud of. Remember? When you came home talking about your new title and your raise, and how you'd finally made it. I was happy for you. I made your favorite dinner. I listened to you talk about your success for 2 hours. I never mentioned that I'd just signed my first 7-figure client." He asked, "Why?" I thought about it for a moment. "Because you were so proud of being the successful one, the breadwinner, the remarkable husband with the supportive wife. And I actually thought that letting you have that narrative was what a good wife did. That making myself smaller so you could feel bigger was love." I got out of bed and walked to the closet. I started pulling out clothes for the day, a simple black dress, the kind I wore to client meetings when I needed to project authority. I supported you for 2 years after you finished grad school, I said, keeping my voice level. While you were interning at firms that paid nothing, I paid our rent. I paid our bills. I never mentioned it because I thought that's what partners did. Ethan was still standing in the doorway, his face pale, the suitcase hanging forgotten in his hand. Last year, when your firm restructured and cut your salary, I covered the shortfall. You were embarrassed, so I didn't make a big deal about it. Just quietly transferred money from my business account to our joint account, so you wouldn't have to worry. And the Tesla you've been test driving every weekend? I made a down payment last week. $20,000. Surprise. He just stood there, looking stunned. I continued. The apartment we live in, the lease is in my name. Has been since before we got married. You moved in with me, not the other way around. The furniture, the art on the walls, the car you drive, I bought all of it. Not because I was keeping score, but because I thought we were building a life together. I thought we were partners. His face had gone from pale to gray. I didn't know. No, you didn't. Because you never asked, I said, the years of suppressed frustration finally finding their edge. In 7 years of marriage, you never once asked me what I was really working on, what I cared about, what I was building. You just assumed I was there to support your career, your dreams, your ambitions. The unremarkable wife with the remarkable husband. I walked past him into the bathroom and started brushing my teeth. Through the mirror, I could see him still standing there, trying to process what was happening. I remembered the day we met. It was 9 years ago at a coffee shop in Seattle. He was a grad student with big dreams about changing the world through architecture. He had this way of talking about buildings like they were living things, and I fell hard. We got married at my parents' ranch in Montana. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends. I wore my grandmother's dress. He cried during his vows and promised to see me, really see me, for the rest of our lives. For the first few years, I thought he did see me. I thought we were happy. I worked my freelance consulting jobs, contributed to the bills, supported his career, made his favorite meals, went to his work events, smiled at his colleagues, and listened to him talk about his projects for hours. I was very good at being the woman in the background, the steady presence that required no attention. I thought that's what he wanted. Ethan said quietly, "You never said you wanted more." I turned to face him directly. You should have asked. In 7 years, you should have wondered at least once if there was more to me than what you could see on the surface. He set down the suitcase, ran his hands through his hair. I don't understand. You had all this success, this company, this money. Why did you hide it? Why did you let me think that I was the remarkable one? I said, because I thought you needed to be the successful one. I thought that's what you wanted. And maybe, just maybe, I was testing you, seeing if you'd love me when you thought I was ordinary, when there was nothing impressive about me to reflect well on you. The test results were in, and you failed spectacularly. I asked him. You said Lily told you I was unremarkable. When was that conversation? Last night. At dinner, he said, looking uncomfortable. A bunch of us went out after work. Jake, Ryan, Harper, Lily. We were talking about relationships, careers, life stuff. And Lily, she didn't mean it in a bad way. She just said she thought I could probably do better. That I was too accomplished to be with someone who didn't have the same level of ambition. I nodded slowly. And you agreed with her? He answered. I thought she had a point. I said, okay. So this morning you woke up and decided to pack a bag. To go to Jake's place and think about whether you wanted to stay married to your unremarkable wife. Is that about right? He winced. When you say it like that. I walked back into the bedroom and started making the bed. You were leaving me, not with conversation or honesty or any attempt to work through whatever you were feeling. You were just packing a suitcase and walking out at 6 o'clock in the morning so you could avoid the mess of an actual breakup. He said, I was going to call you later. Explain everything properly. I replied, how generous. Well, you don't have to call now. You can explain everything properly right here. Tell me exactly what made you think I was unremarkable. I'm genuinely curious. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. It's not that you're unremarkable. It's just you don't have ambitions. You work from home. You don't have a title or a career path or a seven-figure income, or a multi-million-dollar company, or clients in 6 countries, or acquisition offers from 2 Fortune 500 companies. I sat down on the edge of the bed. Which part of that sounds unambitious to you? He said, I didn't know about any of that. Because you never asked, I repeated. 7 years, Ethan. You never asked. The morning light was starting to filter through the blinds, casting stripes across the bedroom floor. I could hear the traffic outside, the city waking up, people starting their ordinary days with their ordinary problems. My problem was no longer ordinary. I want you to go to Jake's place, I said finally. I want you to take your time thinking about whether I'm remarkable enough for you. And while you're doing that, I'm going to be doing something, too. What? He asked. Planning your birthday party, I said, forcing a smile. You said your friends are all invited, right? Jake, Ryan, Harper, Lily. The ones who think I'm so remarkable. He nodded slowly, looking wary. Good. Because I already have a reservation at Le Bouchon for your birthday. I made it 4 months ago. It's a Michelin-starred restaurant with a 3-month wait list. I was going to surprise you with a private dinner, just the 2 of us. But I think I'm going to modify the reservation. Make it a group event. Something memorable. Joyce, what are you planning? He asked. I pulled the black dress over my head and zipped it up. I'm planning to give you and your friends exactly what you want. The truth about who I really am. No more hiding. No more being unremarkable. I grabbed my laptop bag from the desk and my car keys from the dresser. The apartment lease is in my name, like I said. So, take your suitcase and go to Jake's place.
Take a week.
Take 2 weeks. Take however long you need to decide if you want to find someone more impressive than me. I walked to the bedroom door, then paused and looked back at him. But, Ethan, don't miss your birthday dinner. I promise, it's going to be unforgettable. I drove to Ava's apartment in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, arriving just after 7:30. She lived on the 2nd floor of a charming old building, the kind with high ceilings and big windows that caught the morning light. I barely knocked when she opened the door, already dressed, coffee already made. Tell me everything, she said, pulling me inside. I collapsed onto her couch and told her everything. The suitcase, the speech about being unremarkable, the way he'd looked at me when I told him about the acquisition, and the invitation to his birthday dinner that was going to become something else entirely. Ava listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to anger to something that looked almost like vindication. When I finished, she poured us both coffee and sat down across from me. 3 years, she said quietly. 3 years you've been hiding what we built because you were afraid of how he'd react. I wasn't afraid, I said. Yes, you were. You were terrified he'd feel diminished, that he'd be threatened, that he wouldn't be able to handle having a wife who was more successful than him. She set down her cup. And guess what? You were right. The second his friends questioned whether you were remarkable enough, he started packing a suitcase. The words stung, because they were true. Ava and I had met in college freshman year. We were randomly assigned as roommates in a dorm that smelled like old books and dreams. She was studying computer science, and I was studying business management. We'd stayed up late talking about the companies we'd build someday, the impact we'd make, the way we'd change industries that desperately needed changing. After graduation, we'd gone separate ways for a few years. She'd worked at a tech startup in Seattle, and I'd done consulting for various firms. But we'd stayed close, talking every week, sharing ideas, watching each other's careers develop. Then 3 years ago, over drinks at a wine bar in Pioneer Square, Ava had pitched me an idea. Crisis management for tech companies, she'd said. But not the corporate BS kind. The real kind. When a company has a data breach and millions of customer records get exposed. When an executive gets caught doing something awful and the board needs damage control. When everything is on fire and the traditional PR firms are too scared to touch it. I'd been intrigued immediately. Why us? Because we're good at putting out fires. Because we understand tech. And because no one expects 2 women to walk into a room and fix what their overpaid consultants couldn't, she'd grinned. Also, we'd make a fortune. She hadn't been wrong. We'd started small. Ava handled the technical side, understanding the systems, the breaches, the vulnerabilities. I handled the people side, the executives, the boards, the carefully crafted statements that acknowledged problems without creating legal liability. Our first client had been a mid-sized fintech company that had exposed 3 million users' financial data through a coding error. They'd hired us out of desperation after 2 other firms had turned them down. We'd fixed it in 6 weeks, contained the PR damage, implemented new security protocols, and turned a catastrophe into a case study in responsible crisis response. Word spread fast in the insular world of tech executives. By the end of year 1, we'd billed $800,000. By the end of year 2, $2,300,000. Last year, for $1,200,000. We were expensive, discreet, and devastatingly effective at saving reputations and careers when everything was falling apart. 6 months ago, 2 Fortune 500 companies had approached us about acquisition. They wanted our methods, our client list, our expertise. But most of all, they wanted us. The offers had been staggering, the kind of numbers that made my accountant develop a nervous tick when he showed me the projections. But both offers came with the same condition. We had to go public. Our LLC structure had kept our names hidden, offering anonymity to clients who valued discretion above everything else. But if we wanted 8-figure payouts, we needed to become the public faces of what we'd built. I'd hesitated. For months, I told Ava I needed more time, that I wasn't ready, that going public would complicate things at home. The truth was simpler and more pathetic. I was afraid of how Ethan would react. I should have told him years ago, I said now, staring into my coffee. When we first started making real money, when we landed our first 7-figure client, I should have just been honest. Why weren't you? Ava asked gently. I thought about it, because he was so proud of being the successful one, the breadwinner. Every time we went to a party or a work event, he'd introduce me as his wife, who does some freelance consulting, and then he'd spend 20 minutes talking about his latest architectural project. And I'd stand there smiling, nodding, playing the supportive wife. I told myself I was being kind, letting him have the spotlight, not making it a competition. But it wasn't kindness, Ava said. It was enabling. I know that now, I said. She pulled out her laptop, opened it on the coffee table between us. Okay, so here's where we are. Catalyst Ventures is ready to close the deal. $21 million for 60% of the company. Your share after splitting, $12,700,000. Mine the same. We stay on as executive partners, full control of operations, 5-year commitment. The number still didn't feel real. The press release is drafted. Ava continued. Jordan is handling PR. He's coordinated with TechCrunch, Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, all the major business outlets. The story goes live the night of Ethan's birthday. Joyce and Ava Crisis Management acquired by Catalyst Ventures. 2 women built an 8-figure company while everyone was looking the other way. She glanced up at me. That's the angle Jordan wants to lead with. The invisible founders. The women who built something extraordinary while staying completely under the radar. It's a good story, Joyce. People are going to eat it up. I thought about Ethan seeing that story. About Jake, Ryan, Lily, and